We are in Brussels, in the heart of Europe, and in the heart of Europe, in the European Parliament. And we are now Socratic interviewing one of the strongest members of Parliament, I would suggest, who is very focused on. Before she was a diplomat, but then she went for the public cause, and very strongly on human rights, if I'm correct, on fugitive, and on democracy, on real democracy aspects. So how can we implement real democracy? Also in Indonesia, she was very active. So I'm going to interview her. Welcome,
My pleasure.
Mrs. Ana Gomes, originally from Portugal.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a very simple question. You have so many activities around justice, fugitives, solving human rights issues. What if you dream about, okay, 5 years from now, everything is like I dreamed it should be. The role of Europe is like I would sketch. It has its function in the world, and it is, especially in this subject of justice and human rights, it's a very stronghold. So what would that be?
I I've learned. I'm 65, so I have had time to learn that maybe your dream is not going to be realized tomorrow, but it's still worth fighting for it, because at some point you will see it become true. In my life, I've watched incredible situations that seemed unchangeable, that it seemed impossible to change, to reverse, suddenly fall apart. I can talk about the end of apartheid in South Africa, the regime of apartheid, because of course apartheid is still going on in other ways. I can talk about the regime of Suharto in Indonesia. I can talk about the regime of, and that is probably the one that most affected my life, the regime of the colonialist dictatorship in my country, which was suddenly overthrown in 25th of April 74. I lived 20 years under dictatorship, fighting as soon as I had a conscience, a social conscience, against that dictatorship, and then it seemed immovable, but I kept, like others, fighting, and one day it fell apart. I have seen the regime in Ethiopia fall apart. There's one situation where I didn't see the changes that I wanted to see when I came here into the European Parliament in 2004, and where I've seen in many respects the situation got backwards because of a tremendous failure of the international community, of us all, and of Europe in particular. And that is the situation, the conflict between Israel and Palestine. But many other things really were achieved. So that only gives me strength to keep fighting for what I think is right. Even if I know this might not happen in the last 5 years, this might not even happen in my days, but it will happen.
Okay, so
because I have faith
Yeah.
in humanity, you know.
Okay.
I didn't lose that. I will
So-
not
so
lose
the
that.
first thing-
If I lose that, I'm dead.
So the first thing of your answer is, I have faith in humanity. It's a very important assumption you make. And then you say dreaming, okay, will not always come true. You said in the first sentence, but then you said, well, there are 4 or 5 events where the dreaming did came true, where something which seems immovable
Yeah.
just collapsed, like
Yeah.
in Portugal, like in Africa, like in Indonesia,
Yeah.
or Ethiopia. And only the exception of Israel, Palestine still have to change because it seems immovable. So then you basically say dreaming is possible.
Yeah.
So
Dreaming is necessary. What would the world be without utopia? You wouldn't. You need utopia to make things happen.
So you say utopia, you need it to make things happen. What would be your utopia of Europe? So we talk a lot about the problems of Europe, but what if we skip that way and we say this is the utopian Europe.
It's a federal Europe with strong democratic base. And why do I say that? I want democracy, but I want democracy in the world. And in order for Europe, I mean, for any of us who live in Europe today, to make a difference for the regulation of the world, for a rules-based world, for a world that respects the rule of the law, that respects human rights, you need Europe. We need the dimension, the scale that only Europe can bring. It's no country alone. For bigger entities like take Germany at this moment, the bigger European country, cannot do anything alone. It needs to do it in cooperation with others. And I want it organized in a democratic way. That's what a federal way should be. I say this being very conscious that for many, just spelling the word federal is an F word.
And like the other F
But
word.
I think we should not be afraid of that. We actually need to explain to citizens that is absolutely necessary, that it comes with democracy, that all these right-wingers, extreme right-wingers who are telling lies to the people that we'll take back control by going back into the national borders. That's a lie. That's impossible. That's not at all feasible in the kind of globalized, interdependent world we live in, where in the world with the weather, the development, the technological developments, the digitalized world we live in, actually accelerates events, and we need.
So you say basically a lot of stuff, but the most important one you said was we need in the world the rule of law.
Absolutely.
Human rights, because we see a lot of disasters, and there's one place where that can start, that can give the example, that's Europe.
Absolutely.
So we have to be strong to deliver this,
Yes.
and we can only be strong, you say, when we have a federal Europe.
Yeah. Well, we know in Europe, with the tragic, devastating experiences of the two world wars that were fought mostly in Europe, devastation was terrible here in Europe. That led us to start building this peace project that is the European Union, peace and democratic project. We have, therefore, the deep knowledge of what is the price to pay for the absence of the rule of law. We cannot tolerate that people like the Trumps of this world, or the Putins, or the Chinese actually undermine the rules that have been adopted in San Francisco when we formed the United Nations. They set the basis for this rule of law at international level. That's the role of international law. And of course, to me, most fundamental is the international law of human rights. Because without respect for human rights and for the respect for human rights of all individuals, regardless of the differences, without discrimination, we won't set the rule of law at the global level. And for that, we need Europe.
Okay.
Europe it's not a single country alone. It's Europe who can really be a force for good at the global level. We're not alone there. We need others. We need to support others. Look at the demonstrators in Hong Kong. They are telling us that they can make a difference against authoritarian rule, for democracy, for freedom, for the human rights. It's about human rights, not allowing this extradition bill that would hand people to China that would be possible to be tortured or to be even submitted to the death penalty. The force of the people make a tremendous difference.
So you say,
and I say Europe can be a force for that.
For the world. You said Europe is the force of the world because we have this experience behind us. We
Negative
know,
and positive.
and we know how to rebuild. So we
Yes.
did that. That was a sort of
Yeah.
dream realized, and that's why in the world we need Europe to give this and this deliver this global
Yeah.
human
Because
rights
if you
law.
don't have Europe, what do you have? Little powers, minions, ever more minions because there is even demographic decline in most European countries, fighting each other,
Yeah.
fighting for resources, fighting for borders, fighting for whatever. So we have made a huge step for humanity that is bringing us together. You know, it's not by chance that Europe came together first to actually manage together steel and carbon and steel.
Yeah, coal and steel. Yes,
Coal
carbon and
and,
steel.
coal and
Carbon and
steel,
steel. Yeah,
which were the ingredients for making weapons.
exactly. And they changed that in
That
peace.
was the
Yeah,
big moment.
yeah,
We have now all this construction that is the European Union. We lack coherence and strategy in many areas, and that's why the world is where it is. But if we at the European level will have
more.
strategy and coherence, this would make a hell of a difference in the rest of the world. Don't forget, I was just telling you about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It was Europe who made a difference in the 1980s when it came with the so-called Venice Declaration about Israel and Palestine. We don't see Europe making that difference anymore in that particular conflict. On the contrary, we see the cost of the absence of Europe. And we need a more integrated, coherent, strategic Europe. And it could be a force for the benefit for
Whole
not just
world.
for the
Yeah,
Europeans, but for the world.
yeah. So you say, first of all, you said, if all these countries go by themselves, we go back to this conflictuous situation that everybody goes for his own
Yeah.
benefit.
Yes.
That's one thing. And the second thing
Look at
is,
the mess.
yeah,
We're in Britain with the prospect of Brexit.
it's,
Didn't happen
yeah,
yet. I hope it won't happen. But the prospect is that things will get worse if it goes ahead.
yeah.
So,
And you said if Europe is strong, it can reinforce in the whole world this
absolutely.
absolute respect for the law.
It can be a steering force
Yeah.
for good in the world. And
Can you give us the extreme dream you have
That's
in
my
5 years?
extreme.
How does it look?
Well, I mentioned to you this federal way, which is already ingrained from the beginning in the supranational element of the European Union. I don't think that the challenge is to go into redrafting treaties. No, it's in practical terms. And of course, for that, I must say, we need strong leadership. We need leaders with vision. We need leaders with integrity, leaders that are not captured by the corruption, the prevailing corruption, which is a result of the neoliberal policies of the last decades. That is what has really prevented Europe from moving forward and from indeed being that force for good at the global level, even in a more visible way and determining way. As I tell you, I have faith in humanity, and humanity is not something without faces. It's men and women with faces. It's individuals. I trust in humanity as a whole, but I trust in individuals. Single individuals can make a hell of a difference. So I will do my best to support all the people that have courage, that do not submit, that do not conform, that do not accept the capture and the corruption, and that fight it. And I know that many will fall, many courageous people will fall, but their ideas are extremely powerful and will flourish.
So you say a good leadership with mental integrity will have to be in 5 years realized.
I hope
And
very
what
soon.
and what would he do then? What can we as
I think
what will be the narrative?
yeah. Well, I think let's see what happens now with the result of this Game of Thrones that is happening at the European level.
Suppose the best thing happens in your vision.
I hope. Let's see who's going to be leading the European Commission. I think we need a strong European Commission. led by someone with vision, with no nonsense, no tolerance for corruption, attentive, listening to the citizens. Let's see what happens. I mean, I see some of the options are quite promising. Let's see what happens. But whatever happens at the top levels of the leadership of the European Union, I think it's also important what each and any of us citizens can do.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be anymore in the European Parliament because I decided I believe in limitation of mandates. Since I had fulfilled 3 mandates, it was, according to my own belief, time to go. But I am going into civil society, and I'm not. I'm bringing with me all the knowledge, all the networks that I have established here, and I can put that at the service of the society, not just in my country, but throughout Europe and even throughout the world, in helping those who can make a difference.